Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And I'm so happy to be back with my friend, Dr. Michele Borba. It's always so much fun to talk to you.
Aw.
Dr. Borba is an educational psychologist, a best-selling author, and a Today Show contributor. You have spoken to so many people everywhere. And I'm going to say the thing that I am most grateful for is that your advice is so sound and realistic, and it's something that parents in particular can really implement. So and I'm going to say that you are an advocate about helping children thrive, which leads me right into why we're here right now. Do you have the cover? Do you have your book?
I do. Yay.
So Michele's book is now out in paperback, which is so exciting. I'll give you the title, Thrivers, The Surprising Reasons Why Some Kids Struggle and Others Shine. And thank you, Michele. We have 5 books to give away. So if you want a book, email editor@yourteenmag.com. The first 5 will get a copy. So hopefully we'll get that into the chat so that everyone knows to email editor@yourteenmag.com. Okay, let's get into the information here. You've been talking to a lot of kids.
Yeah.
That is really exciting for us as parents because what we want to know from an outsider, what are they saying?
Well, I've been talking to a lot of kids forever because I am convinced that the best ways to find a solution is ask a kid. They never let you down. But prior to the pandemic, why I wrote Thrivers is I actually started focus groups, about 500 kids from coast to coast. And I began to see one trend that really was concerning me. That was, most of them were saying, regardless of, really peak performers, kids over in the wonderfully loved children. But the term that kept coming up over and over again was anxious and stressed and empty. Then came the pandemic. Now what I'm doing is looking at if that was prior to the pandemic and 1 in 5 American kids was going to suffer from some kind of a mental health problem. We're now looking at what the CDC says is 1 in 3, which is why we parents have got to get this together here, reboot our parenting and realizing our kids are struggling. I wrote Thrivers to figure out research-based, simple, proven ways to raise the resilient child. But the kids today, in the last 4 or 5, let's be clear, I was in Florida, I was in Texas, I was in California, and I was in Indiana. I asked them, what's the number 1 term that describes how you feel right now? Most of these are juniors and seniors in high school. The top term was overwhelmed. Number 2, what's another one? I am stressed to the max. I feel empty. I am sleep deprived. I am struggling so much. These are kids who they said had it sort of together. And now they're really feeling like they're worried about there not being, 3 kids said this, world ready. I don't know if I can get and succeed in college. Should I go to college? If I'm struggling so much now, what should my next plan be? So it was clear that these kids wanted some solutions. The other thing, though, it was fascinating is, hold on to your hats, parents. They love you desperately. But one thing that kept coming up over and over again is they didn't want to disappoint you. They were very worried about how much time and effort you'd put into helping them become their best, and they didn't want to disappoint you. So there you go.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I shared the wrong thing there. I touched the thing lightly there. Okay, so Cynthia, I just wanted to let you see, Michele, I wanted to let you see that Cynthia said she's a big Michele Borba
I love
fan.
Cynthia. Hey, Cynthia.
Isn't that great to start off your day?
Yeah.
Okay, so the kids are self-aware, right? They know how to describe what they're feeling.
Yes.
So my question is, do they also know what would help them?
Yes. And that's the other thing that's fascinating. When I say what's causing this, they would say it's the uncertainty, it's the unpredictability. I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't think I have the skills. Okay, so what would have helped you? First thing is, teach us some skills before we leave home. We've got to learn that. I said, what kind of skills are you needing? Time management keeps coming up over and over again. And Susan, the fascinating thing about that is I know most schools are teaching it, but kids are saying, but I need to keep practicing it so I can use it. I think what's hit them is when you are in an inability to focus, or your motivation levels are so low and your stress levels are so high, you can't use some of those skills before. The second thing is stress management. But fascinating is the teens kept saying, give us a range of stuff. Mindfulness works for some kids. Meditation works for the others. Yoga may work for her. Don't teach us just what works for you. We have got to figure out what works for us. I love that comment from, this is from Greensboro. And the kid then said, yeah, and then you got to help us practice it. Because unless we keep practicing and practicing and practicing it, we won't be able to use it the moment you says bye and you drop us off at college. So it's practicing those skills are critical.
Okay, I want to go back to one of the things you said about feeling a lack of organization. So when I spoke with you before, you said that sometimes they're feeling so overwhelmed, they don't know where to start.
Yes.
And I mean, we all have to have been in a moment where that was our own experience. How do we help our kids cross the line from kind of they're frozen, they're paralyzed, to being able to attack the whatever it is?
Empathize with where they're at, that they are legitimately don't know where to start and they're overwhelmed. You do what I think is a great strategy, and it's called you chunk the fear. Instead of looking at the entire project, I'll never get this done, or I'll never be able to read this whole book. Sweetie pie, don't read the whole book tonight. Start with, where are you going to start? What's the first thing? If you help them get in the door, it's actually called the foot in the door technique from psychology.
Wait, what is it? Chunk the
fear.
I love it. I've never heard that before. I think it says it all.
You know where I learned that?
Tell us.
Navy SEALs.
Wow.
When I was writing Thrivers, I went the world to find the best of the best experts. And you're talking about the best, most elite forces in the world saying, you know, our goal is to get through the battle, but that isn't what we think about, or we'd never make it. Instead, we chunk the fear. I said, what do you mean? Well, we get through the first 5 minutes of the battle, then the next 5 minutes of the battle. That's a great strategy. Once you teach that to a child or a teen, take the whole thing and now chunk it. Post-its are glorious. Take the whole task. And in fact, you can do this if you got a younger kid. With a younger kid, you draw which things you're going to do tonight. Now put them in order. What are you going to do first, second, third? One little piece that's fascinating, tell your kid to do the hardest thing first, because that's the thing he's most stressed out about. He'll be spending 3 hours worrying about the hardest thing and worry and put that at the end. So it's going to inhibit him from doing his best on everything else. Just little tips along the way. If you teach a skill like that, that's what I tried to do with Thrivers, is come up with simple skills that really maximize our kids' ability to thrive. But kids also said, but you got to keep doing the same skill over and over again. Once you learn how to chunk the fear on Monday, you got to help remind your child to do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, until they finally say, don't worry about it. I got it. I'm chunking it.
I love that we call all these things practice, right? Like you practice yoga, you practice meditation, because you don't get somewhere. This is like an ongoing thing. Okay, tell me what the kids are saying about how we're doing in response to what they are living through.
Well, they're worried.
Oh no.
Oh no. They love us dearly, but they're also, many of them, saying they're so stressed. I really am worried about my mom or my dad. So when we look at resilience, one of the things that a resilient kid has going, don't feel guilty, because we have every right to be stressed, but we've got to figure out how to mirror a little bit of calmness or optimism, because our kids do love us and they're picking it up from us. One thing that seems to work for teens is that admit it. They'll go, yeah, I know. And then say, you know, I'm really stressed or I'm really frustrated. If you admit it, the first thing is it allows the kid to say, yeah, I'm really stressed too, or I'm really frustrated. Allow kids in your home to be able to admit their feelings. And then the second thing is admit what you plan to do about it. I think I'm going to start taking yoga, or I think I'm going to take that slow, deep breathing, or you know what I'm going to do? The moment I start to feel my stress coming in, I'm going to do this signal, and you're going to honor me and you're going to remind me. That signal is, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to walk to the other room and do some slow, deep breaths until we can get together, because sometimes when I'm really stressed, I'm not as relaxed and talk to you in the relaxed manner that I should. Our kids say one of the best things we can do. When I say, what are things that parents should say to you? They said, sometimes I know they don't know the right thing to say. They don't have to. If they just sit on the couch next to me and they're relaxed, I'll know they're there for me. For some kids, I like my back or my neck rubbed. Other kids say, don't touch me, just relax with me. Because they also said they're missing the old good days, like the laughs and the fun. And that may not be available, but maybe it's putting on a movie together. Maybe it's just finding the time. Most of them, do you know how many times they said cookies? Homemade stuff kept coming up to the top of their list. I love it when my mom brings a plate of cookies and puts it in front of me.
Okay, here's a hack. If you don't have time to make the cookies, buy store-bought and put them in the oven. Put them in the oven.
Exactly. But don't say, I worked my tail off for you on this.
Yeah. Okay, so they're saying that they're stressed, and you're suggesting that the best thing we can do is to understand how we cope with our own stress. Yes. So, not all of us actually are that self-aware, right?
Exactly.
So if the best way we can help our kids is to help ourselves, what do you recommend? As you said before, there's not one fix it for everybody. How do we determine what our best self-soothing approach is so that we can then model that for our kids?
I love that question, because the best way to teach any skill is to show it, don't tell it. We waste so much time with our lectures where it would be so much better for them to go, oh, she's taking that deep breath. The first thing is, and the same thing is going to go for your teen, identify what your stress signs are. And if you could just, you may know it, but maybe it takes a little intentionality, be able to sit there and go, oh my gosh, I'm now realizing for the first time that right before I blurt out or right before I get into meltdown mode, I always grind my teeth, or I always feel it coming from my stomach, or I always feel it in my cheeks. Kids have the same thing. Maybe the cool thing you could do as a family for the first couple of weeks is quietly and in dignity point out each kid's stress sign. Said, hey, I noticed that this is what you do. Would you point out mine? And I'm telling you, your kid will tell you. My kids would always say, you do that weird thing with your eyes, Mom. Every time you go like this with your eyes. And I wasn't aware I was doing it, but I started to feel into it and know it. The reason for it is, first, we're not stressed 24/7. So that's the good news. But the second thing is, we do the same thing with our bodies. There are body signals that tell us we're starting to get stressed. And many of our kids, particularly, by the way, headmasters, principals, are seeing a change in the kids. They're far more irritable. They're far more likely to melt down. They're far more, when I say, what else are you seeing across the board? They're a little less civil. They're more disrespectful. They're quicker to anger. That's because they've been building the stress up and they don't know what else to do. So the first thing is, everybody get on board to figuring out what your stress signs are. That's step one.
I want to say it's such an interesting conversation, because I just assumed that how I respond is physically is how everyone responds. And I just learned recently, like, we all have our own way. You have eyes that go like, it's so interesting.
Yeah. I think some of this stuff is just awareness 101. You can't change, which we all want to do to be better for our kids, unless we have what's the replacer behavior? What do we do instead? And how wonderful, seriously, if not only you were to finally identify your stress signs and admit it to your kids, but be able to help each of your kids learn their stress sign before they go off to college. I think that's one of the most essential needs that every child must figure out, because then they know when their stress is rising to the point they need help.
Yeah, so you can't deal with the second thing of how you're going to relax yourself and go and live through it until you identify what leads into it.
Well, and here's why. When that stress builds to the maximum, and we've all been that way, cognitive control goes. Example 101, and you're going to all identify this one. Remember when you took your kid to the toy store around the holidays and they had the meltdown exorcism of the temper tantrum because you said no to the toy? I have been there many a time when I've heard the parent turn to the kid and say, calm down. And you want to say, it's a little late, because when stress builds to the exorcism, there's no control. And that's the same with our teens and the same with us. We got to get that moment when we know we have control. And then the next thing is, what are you going to do to replace it? The best thing, and it may not work for your teens, but back to the Navy SEALs, I was working on 18 Army bases and teaching counselors how to help kids with post-traumatic stress. And the SEALs said, hey, we are doing something that is rewiring our brain. The first thing we do 3 things. I think every teen, and if you tell a teen, this is what Navy SEALs do, you're going to get a bigger buy-in. The first thing they do is identify their stress, and they point it out to each other. Hey, you're starting to get stressed, or you're starting to do this. The second thing they do is tell themselves inside their head, I need to chill, or I need to calm down. Or kids say, don't tell me to do that. Just, I need to relax. Whatever it is, they say it, and that triggers it.
It doesn't work if we say it.
No.
Nothing's worse than you need to relax.
No, but you keep going it. And if you model it, hey, my gosh, I'm starting to get really stressed. I need to tell myself, chill. You're actually modeling it.
Yeah. So even narrate it. Narrate it as you're doing it.
Narrate it. Yeah. But don't let your kid know he's supposed to be eavesdropping. Be sneaky.
Okay. So I think that we are often giving advice that are like holding 2 opposing goals in mind. And I think that when we're worried about our kids being stressed, there's a little bit of this like, they need this from you, right? And then there's this other conversation going on that to build resilience, you have to stop rescuing them.
Yeah.
How do we do both those things? And especially right now when our kids are more stressed than they've ever been.
Well, the answer is slowly, but because you never do, resilience can be taught. Resilient kids are made, not born. What is one of the highest correlations of a resilient child? They have agency. It takes a while for them to build that from the inside out. But when the challenge comes, and it will, who knows what the challenges are that our kids will face? The kid who's more likely to get through and to the other side is the kid who says, I got this, because they have the skills and the protective buffer. So now let's rewind that and go, so what am I doing today? Today, and made from this moment on until your child, you say goodbye and drop them off on whatever their life will be on their next path, is you recognize what the kids are saying. We're not ready for life. Maybe each month from this moment on, you figure out one skill your kid needs so that you don't rescue him anymore. And you start changing your footwork. It could be filling the car with gas. It could be making the bed. It could be time management skills. By the way, one of the top skills that all the teens told me they're scared to death upon is financial management. How the heck am I going to manage my checkbook? So that could be another skill. Don't do it in one night. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We're going to do financial management, but take it on for the month or however long it takes to be. Bring your kid to the bank. Give your kid the checkbook. Give your kid a very small amount and say, here's how you manage it. But the first thing you do is you show the skill. Watch me. I'm going to show you how I fill out my bank account. The second thing is you do it together with the child. Now, let's do it together so that I'm still doing it, but your kid is doing it. The third thing is now you show me that you can do it. Your kid models, I got this, mom. Well, show me that you can do it. It's the prove factor. And once your kid can do whatever skill you've been talking on, it could be the microwave. Kid said, I don't even know how to use the microwave. How do I do my laundry? What you then do is step back and never do for your teen what your teen could do for yourself. It's a slow process, but it's flipping it and making it easy. And maybe it's one skill a week or one skill a month, but that's the next little agenda. Ask yourself, what are the skills that my kid's going to need in that real world so he's going to feel comfortable being him or herself in that new realm?
I think approaching an adult, right? Like being able to go to your professor at school requires some practice in high school. So how do you, and I want to add to this conversation that as you're giving the advice, I'm thinking about my kids yelling at me that they're too stressed to learn how to use a microwave. And in that story is me hearing they are so stressed. Maybe I should just do it for them. So,
well, the first piece is choose the skills that you know that your kid needs. Second of all, do not teach the skill when the kid is in a meltdown. Notice in a relaxed mode, the kid happened to be sitting there eating cookies and you happen to be sitting there. I have 3 boys. I'd always find the place where they were more relaxed, and it was always by the refrigerator around 5 o'clock. And that's where I'd plant myself. If I was going to teach a skill, that's when I teach the skill, but I don't make it into a lecture. I make it into it's like it's fun. And I show them and even put a Post-it. Okay, here's the skill. Now you show me you can do it. And if they're relaxed, they can do it. That's the piece. Back to, you mentioned a really interesting point. Speaking up for yourself. because the other thing we're seeing, and a resilient kid can, the other thing we're seeing across the United States right now, a major trend in teens is they're more risk adverse. They're afraid to speak up. I have had more teachers in high school say, I don't know what happens to the kids, but they're afraid to think outside the box. They're afraid to raise their hand. A couple of points on that one is first, fascinating. Mary Bud Rowe. She's a fabulous researcher. She tells us a little hint. When you ask your kid a question, wait at least 3 seconds for the answer. The biggest thing we do is we instantly want answers. And what we're finding as stress builds, kids need time to process. Mary Bud Rowe discovered these were tips for teachers of why the kid isn't answering. She said, you're pushing them too fast. Give them processing time. And if you just give them 3 seconds, the kid who wouldn't have answered says one word. The kid who maybe would have answered with one word gives you a sentence. And the kid who would have answered anyway gives you a dissertation. So crunch your time. Be relaxed when you ask, and give kids some thinking time. You can also have fabulous debates in your home. We've discovered that if you allow kids to just talk, debates going on right now are incredible. That could be, my gosh, you turn on any news feed, anything that's going on in the life right now is give your kid an opinion and then allow him to speak up, because we have got to allow our kids to have voice and practice voice in a safe surrounding area, which is our home. You may disagree with a lot of things that are coming out of your kid's mouth. Well, that's one idea. Okay, thank you for sharing that. But I know that it's a new trend. That risk aversion is big.
I think one of the things you said that's really challenging in my house is allowing for silence. So, there's this fast-paced conversation, but not everybody has that same pace. And so saying something short and pausing, I think that's really, really solid advice. Like they might not be on the same pace as you.
Well, that's exactly it. Or when stress builds, you can't think. So you need more ability to just have the time to downsize. Thank you for pointing that out, because when I was writing Thrivers, my goal was to find proven stuff only that's so simple that we can instantly replicate it and maximize the results. Our mistake is trying to do too much. I tried that yesterday. It didn't work. Yeah, because new behaviors takes a minimum of 21 days of repetition. So choose one thing that you want to try. If it's coming up with stress signs, is it doing 1-2 breathing and teaching it to your child? Is it pausing? Is it teaching time management? Is it chunking a fear? Any of those are not going to be overnight to be learned, because they're habits, and habits take time. And we may not be giving the time that our kids deserve and need in order to process it and be able to use it without us. That's our goal, Susan. Our goal is for the kid to be able to use it when you're not there.
Yeah. Okay. So the pushback from the kid, how do we deal with that? So the kid's like, oh my God, no, I'm not learning that. I'm not doing that. And it might not be in my level tone of voice either. So, it's one thing to have our plan that you've just given us. Doesn't always work.
No, and it doesn't always work. A big piece is how it's presented. So be careful on it. When you present it, where you present it, how you present it, and don't make it look like it's a lecture. With some of the simplest ways to do it, particularly with boys, fascinating research finds don't talk to them face to face when you're talking and suggesting it. Go play basketball with them, or go to when you're doing with a walk, or sit side by side when you're watching a movie and then present it. Find the way to get your foot in the door when the kid is most receptive. And sometimes it's like, don't use it as your idea. Wow, can you imagine what I just heard that another mom is doing? Or get on board with another like-minded mother. That can be really helpful. So you can present it and go, here's what John's doing at his house.
Okay, here's my last question for you. And you should feel free to end with something that you want to say. But my last question for you is, can kids tell us what they need? I mean, I think there's a little bit of an assumption that we even like, how do they react to stress? It's all about us teaching them. So we forget, or maybe it's not valuable, to ask them, what do you need from me? Maybe there's a little bit of an assumption that they don't know that yet either. Like they might not know where their anger bubbles in their body. So maybe they're not really aware of what they need from us. What do you think?
I think you've answered the question. I think that's exactly it. What we need to do at this moment in time is not making assumptions on our kids. Or here's the other thing we know is that, but he used to 2 years ago, but now he's not. And when we look at why isn't he as motivated, or why is he raising the white flag, or why is she so stressed out? I think what we got to do is rewind back to where the child is. Expectations matter dramatically. Ours to the child. And if there's a final word on that one, is your expectations are like a rubber band. We did it when our kids were 2 and 3, and now we need to do it when they're 17 and 18. Your goal is to figure out what the kid is capable of, seriously capable of, comfortable doing, and then gently stretch him like a rubber band, but don't snap him. If you snap him, it's too far. It's too hard. If you need help, for heaven's sakes, get it. Talk to somebody else who cares desperately about your child, who knows your child desperately. The other thing I find fascinating is chapter 1. One of the highest correlations of kids who are resilient and thrive, they have hobbies. I love that. Hobbies. And it doesn't make any difference what the hobby is as long as it's healthy. But what Emmy Werner just found is that the kid then, when the stress builds, goes to the hobby. Does your child have one? Before they go to college, please, college counselor said that is unbelievably helpful. The kid knows that yoga works and they love it. The kid knows to strum on the guitar. The kid knows that book is really helpful. What we've got to do is maybe present options to the child, or get Great Aunt Hattie or Uncle Fred to do woodworking classes with the kid, or baking. It doesn't make any difference what the hobby is. What we now know is that hobby lasts a lifetime for the child, and it becomes a go-to as a decompressor. Maybe we can all identify our hobbies right now in our house, or come up with the end of the month. Maybe that's our plan for our first month.
Okay, I love that you talk quickly because we covered so much ground. Do you have anything left to tell us?
Yeah, I think the other thing is the question that comes up from particularly parents of teens. Is there a window? Am I too late? And the best news is no, you're not. There's no window. In fact, listen, the entire counseling industry would go out of business if there was a window. It's not too late for us as well. Resilience, by the way, is not one trait. I identified the 7 most highly correlated. Each chapter in Thrivers is one of those. Self-confidence is the first one. You got to know what you're good at, your strengths. Number 2 would be empathy, social competence. Do I get along with others? That took a dive during COVID. 3rd would be self-control. Do I have the ability to put the brakes on impulses? 4th is integrity. That's your values inside your kid's head. 5th is curiosity. They're a problem solver and a seeker. They're open to ideas and possibilities. 6th is perseverance. They don't give up until 7th is optimism. Notice?
Do you need all of those?
No, that's the other thing that's great. It's a rare one of us, excuse me, that has all 7. But choose 1 or 2 and then keep adding them. Because what the other thing I learned that was my, oh my gosh moment, is the multiplier effect. Sometimes we only go for 1. But if you go for another one, the 2 together multiply the odds of resilience for a child. And that's what we want, kids who can thrive.
Oh, Dr. Michele Borba, I love talking to you. You give us such solid advice. We can implement it. And everybody who is interested in the book, please email editor@yourteenmag.com. We have 5 copies to give away. Thank you for those as well. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.